everybody. I'm Jesse Waters along with Judge Janine Pirro, Richard Fowler, Katie Pavlich, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Democrats are worried that Joe Biden's going to blow it at next week's CNN presidential debate.
This is the entire election as far as I'm concerned. The entire world will be watching. If Biden goes out there and messes up, it's game over. If he walks out there and a week later he's lower in the polls, it's panic in the party. If you can stand toe-to-toe with a runaway train like Donald Trump for an hour and a half, you are fit to be president, period, point blank. This is the whole presidency in a bottle in a week.
Maybe that's why Joe's spending the next 7 days cramming like crazy, while Trump's tearing it up on the campaign trail. The confused commander-in-chief's being secluded at Camp David for the next week to prep for a 90-minute debate. His right-hand man, Ron Klain, is running point and making sure the big guy doesn't wander off the stage. Joe won't have access to his handy little note cards, so aides have binders full of questions with possible answers to each of them. A CNN report claims they'll be juicing Joe with his favorite drink of orange Gatorade. And if Biden gets flustered, Barack Obama's crack team of ex-speechwriters have a couple of zingers.
I may have a couple. I have some zingers.
Okay.
I have some potential zingers.
All right.
We passed the largest climate bill in history. You remember climate change, like how you changed the climate in that courtroom when you stunk it up with your farts. I'm bringing down costs. You're promising to cut taxes for your rich friends. But Donald, if you have to cut their taxes so they'll want to hang out with you, are they really your friends? Did they even call you after the whole fart thing?
And while Sleepy gets his much-needed reprogramming at Camp David, he may have to deal with a different type of Trump.
I don't mean to simplify this, but, you know, Donald Trump's rhetoric even, and even his sort of swagger looks more like 2016 in the campaign you covered so closely, Katie, than he looks in 2020.
Donald Trump will be firing up crowds and hitting the books for his prep. The former president will be holding a rally in Philly Saturday night. The Don also doing policy meetings with advisors and congressional allies. Greg, what do you expect to see from Joe Biden? Are they actually scripting jokes?
I love a good fart joke, don't get me wrong. But telling Joe Biden to make fart jokes is like telling Alec Baldwin to make gun safety jokes. It's going to blow up in your face, perhaps your pants. My advice, tape a cheat sheet to the back of your life alert button and just pretend, ooh, hold on, and then look like that. Meanwhile, Trump should prep to debate Joe by practicing on a crash test dummy. Even when I say that, though, I know that I'm making a mistake because it bears repeating. Predicting a Biden disaster means anything short of a disaster is a Biden win. So don't listen. I would not treat this like he's an invalid. I think Trump has to go in and focus on the harmful woke policies that have damaged the country. He should talk about how everything costs more, not just food, but your quality of life and your personal freedom. You know, crime raises the price of freedom, just like inflation. But the big point, and what makes this so rare, is you're going to get to compare two successive terms back to back, 2016 to 2020 and 2020 to now. And you could look at the last 4 years and say, it's amazing how the country's decline mirrors Joe's. It's cause and effect. And I think, you know, the challenge for Trump is that this debate and the coverage will favor a soft landing for Biden. CNN was picked for a reason. They bought every false narrative about Trump. They're about as objective to Biden as Biden is about Hunter. So I think that's going to be a vital issue. In the perfect world, Trump's specific realities will outweigh Biden's abstract doom prophecies. When Joe says you're a convicted felon, you say, so? I stood for a sham trial. You were deemed unfit and couldn't stand for a real one. Boom. So he's got to just, and they're going to try to say, they're going to try and paint Trump as a big meanie. And I think Trump just has to say, you don't have to like me. You just have to like the policies, because that's really what it's about. You don't have to like your boss to know that he's running a great company.
Katie, going in there for a week for a 90-minute debate, the whole time at Camp David. Do you think that's smart preparation, or do you think they're overdoing it? Can you be too prepared if you're Joe Biden?
You can definitely be too prepared and overthink things. But if you underestimate your opponent, that can be a fatal flaw, whether it's in sports or whether it's in politics. So neither side should be underestimating what could happen here. Joe Biden, I think, could do a decent job, but the bar has been set so low for him based on his own behavior, the wandering off, the not being available for press interviews, that it may be easy for him to just step right over that bar. But when it comes to what issues they're going to be talking about, the advantage is always, of course, to Biden. When it comes to the liberal media, those questions will be much easier. There'll be lots of questions about democracy and questions about him saying he's a dictator. But Trump can be very specific about what Biden has done to him, to the country, and what Donald Trump did when he was in office. And for the first time in decades, centuries, we have two basically incumbents saying, I want a second term. Right? You're not having a first-time runner running against the incumbent president. Both of them are comparatively asking for a second term. So that's something that they can put side by side, and certainly America will be watching. It's very, very early. It'll be ahead of the RNC, and Biden's going to have to do well if he wants to get to the DNC convention without more of these rumors of replacing him.
Yeah, there are rumors, Richard. Do you agree with Van Jones? If he does not have a great night on Thursday, is that it? Is the race over?
I wouldn't say the race is over. I think it would be definitely hard to come back from not having a good night. But here's what we do know, or I actually agree with Katie and Greg. I think because we've seen, one could say it's because of clips of how the president, like a clip of how people have utilized clips from the president, him using bad clips of the parachuter from last week, a cheat fake, a deep fake, whatever you want to call it. I think what you've seen is that as long as the president can go in there and stand up for 90 minutes, he wins the debate. But beyond that, I think the president has another mission to achieve. He has to talk to his base of voters, right? What Trump has going for him is his base is solidly behind him. Joe Biden has some waffling in his base. He could win his base back next week by having a real conversation with them. He has to, one, acknowledge that inflation is a real thing, but he has to, two, acknowledge for his base what he's been able to do for them over the past couple of years. We have the strongest job numbers in American history. There's no more lead pipes in America, thanks to the work that I've done. We've made the largest investment.
There are no lead pipes in America?
There's
anywhere?
no more. That has all been taken up because of the American Rescue Plan, because of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Remember, when we started this, we were talking about we spent weeks covering Flint, Michigan. Flint, Michigan is no longer a problem because lead pipes have been removed.
In Flint.
In other places as well. There was also a story about Jackson, Mississippi. There's a story about Jackson, Mississippi.
That's a pretty general statement.
There was a story about Jackson, Mississippi, and those pipes have been removed because of legislation passed by the Biden administration. But I think he has to go there and he has to sell that. And our recent Fox poll showed that you're seeing an uptick for the president. While voters do say that the economy is still not as good as they want it to be, the economy right now, they say, is looking better for Biden than it's looking for Trump.
Janine, go ahead.
Trump is still killing it in the swing states. We all know that's where this election is going to happen. And I think that because of all the not cheap fakes, and I hope that task force is out there working on identifying cheap fakes, but because of Biden's behavior, there is a very low expectation right now. And I believe that there is a low expectation. And I think that Biden will overperform. I think they're going to juice him up the way they juiced him up for the State of the Union. I think he's going to, stand up there for 90 minutes or sit, whatever they're doing. And he is going to be, more in control the way he was during the State of the Union. What I think is interesting is there was a coin toss, and Biden won the coin toss, and he had the right, he had a choice. Do you want to decide which podium, or do you want to decide who goes last? He made a decision to decide to be on the podium on the right as the viewer looks at the television. He thought that was important. Now, I don't know why that was so important to him. He then, of course, gave to Donald Trump the right to choose to be the last speaker, which, as a prosecutor, I've always thought was the most important thing that you can do. But I think that Joe Biden's feeling good going into this thing. But I also think that, according to an article in Axios, that it will be the meme debate. If you'll recall, in 2016, the debate between Vice President candidate Kamala Harris and Mike Pence, it was all about the fly on Mike Pence's head. And that was in 2020. But in 2016, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, it was about that point when Donald Trump just turned around and said, you'd be in jail. So I think that especially now, given that we pay such little, attention to long periods of news, I think there's going to be memes that come out, and the memes, whoever controls the memes, is going to signal and get out there and get their message out there. And finally, let me say this. There is one entertainer on that stage. There is one guy who is able to tell a story of how America succeeded under him, and there's another guy who just can't explain why things are so bad. And if they stick to the facts and to their strengths, I think that Trump wins, but I think that Biden will overperform.
And you mean juiced up by orange Gatorade?
Juiced up Joe, not with Gatorade.
Okay.
I don't think it was Gatorade for the
I don't
State
think
of the
so
Union.
either. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.